As we commemorate this year's Human Rights Day, we reflect on the 2024 international report from the NGO Equality Now that finds continued gaps in family laws in many African countries that fuel discrimination of women and girls. Today, we discuss laws in areas ranging from marriage, inheritance, and more, as we look for solutions to keep women and girls from a life of disadvantage and despair. Hello, this is Our Voices. Thank you for being with us. I'm Oriane Itangishaka. I'm here with my co-hosts, Simenesh Yakoye and Jeannie Niwa. Now, ladies, let's take a quick question before we go into our deep discussions about this. What is your viewpoint on some of the gender bias laws that you might have come across in some of the countries that you cover, especially in family laws? Simenesh, let's start with you.
Yeah, so some, countries have family laws and different regulations that deals with women's rights, right? Mm-hmm. But I think they differ from country to country within the continent. Some have strong, better laws, and others, it's weak in other countries. Mm-hmm. But even having strong legal frameworks, customary laws or traditions, they can be a challenge, yes, as we have seen in Kenya, Uganda, or even in Ethiopia. These countries, for example, they have, laws that support women's right to own land, to own property, to control and to, manage it. Mm-hmm. But we've seen a lot of times women being thrown out of their house after divorce or when their husbands die. Mm-hmm. Or being denied to inherit their husband's property. Mm-hmm. So I think in most cases also, these women, if they want to pursue legal routes, they don't know where to start from. They don't even know that right exists for them, or they don't have maybe financial means, to be able to do that. So I think practically the traditional patriarchal norms still continue to impose on women's rights and, family laws.
Yes, we see that in the legal systems, yes, right?
Exactly.
What about you, some of the countries?
Yeah, I'll touch on the Congo law. There was a lot of issues regarding mixed marriage with different ethnicity, where you had ethnicity and tradition that would, take away from the women, from the, if the husband deceased, you will have the family taking everything away. And I think now they're really enforcing people to get married in City Hall to be protected by the law, because even though it's based on the family code, it privileged women and child, so the woman is not left out. Okay. So yes, depending on where you are, it's less accessible, like you say. It's, women do not know that they even be protected by the law. And sometimes you just don't want to deal with it because you'll be looked down. You know why you are putting those laws in front of the tradition. But yet, the country is there to protect families.
I do agree in that we do see in many countries where the law is there and it does protect women, but yet the tradition is so strong that it just doesn't translate, right? Yes. And I have not covered stories in places like Algeria in Northern Africa, but upon reviewing some of the testimonies of women there who have undergone issues like divorce proceedings, they say that Article 66 of their family law says that if a woman decides to remarry after divorce, she loses custody of her children that she had from her previous marriage. And so those kind of things of separating a mother and her children just because she found another person to love her or even to help her to take care of the children isn't fair. I don't think that's fair either. Yeah. Well, women's rights advocates in Malawi are voicing growing concerns that traditional practices and customary laws and statutory laws discriminate against women and are in direct conflict with statutory laws on women's rights. Recent studies have shown that the issue is prevalent across many African countries. However, in Malawi, some efforts are made to fight for the women's place in communities that still holds on to old cultural practices that are in direct conflict with the law. Lamek Masina reports from Blantyre.
Margaret Gatewera Banda has been championing campaigns for women and girls' rights for decades through her organization, Women's Legal Resources Center, or WOLEC. Despite her various efforts to educate communities on their rights, she says the battle against women discrimination is still far from being won.
The Malawi Gender Equality Act and other laws, they outlaw the issue of discrimination. But you find that most of the times our customs would be talking contrary to what the statutory laws are talking about. And I think that's where we still remain with a problem.
Activists have helped increase maximum sentence for rape from 10 years to life imprisonment, as demonstrated in 2021 when the High Court in Cholo district sentenced a rapist to 40 years in prison. Katewera also says the Malawi Gender Equality Act has, however, been successful in many ways advocating for women. It has helped pave the way to an increasing number of women in parliament and other decision-making positions. But all that is not still enough. Katewera cites issues of child marriages as an example of how customs conflict with statutory laws in Malawi, where about half of girls marry before the age of 18, according to the government records.
Yeah, right now, Malawi, we are dealing with issues of child marriage. You'll find that by custom, when a girl reaches puberty, they are regarded as grown-up, and therefore they can get married. But if you look at the statutory law says any person below the age of 18, they're not supposed to get married. So these are some of the things that we are dealing with in the communities.
In 2015, Malawi passed the Marriage, Family Relations and Divorce Act, which, among others, outlines equitable distribution of family property in time of divorce and the death of a spouse, but its implementation remains a challenge.
In real life, you find that most of the times people say, okay, the woman did not contribute anything financially to the marriage, therefore they're not supposed to get anything from this marriage.
A recent report by international NGO Equality Now also cites Malawi as one of 20 African countries with loopholes in family laws that favor men in matters of sex, marriage and inheritance, among other issues. It says, for example, courts in Malawi have ruled rape does not apply when it comes to marital relations. It says customary law in Malawi presumes perpetual consent to sex within marriage, and that a wife can deny her husband sex only when she is sick or legally separated. The Victim Support Unit of the Malawi Police Service was established years ago, partly to handle family-related issues, including marital rape, seldom reported at the unit. Here the enforcers told VOA how they handled a case of a woman who complained to the unit that her husband raped her.
Normal cases of rape, we issue maybe a medical report form to go to the hospital so that the hospital can confirm to say no, the lady has been raped. But so, since it was the first time for her to come here, we said no, let's involve the husband first and see if we can establish what exactly happened.
The discussion ended in favor of the man after he said he forced himself into his wife after being denied sex for so long. Lapani says the couple was instead advised to return home and live in harmony with one another. In the meantime, Katewera Banda and her Women's Legal Resources Center continues running programs to educate women on their rights and teaching them on various legislations that help safeguard their rights. Meanwhile, the study by the Equality Now recommends that countries safeguard women's rights and girls' rights within the framework of family law, and advocates enacting and implementing robust legislative and policy frameworks that align with international and regional human rights obligations. Lamek Masina, VOA News, Blantyre, Malawi.
Thank you, Lamek Masina, for that report. Now, to hear more about the findings of the report produced by the NGO Equality Now that found places like Sudan, women cannot initiate divorce, Ms. Deborah Nyokabi is here with us via Skype from Nairobi, Kenya, and she is the Equality Now's program officer in the legal equality team supporting the efforts of the global campaign for equality in family law in Africa, and can tell us more about their findings and what they are trying to do about it. Ms. Deborah Nyokabi, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. So based on the findings in your report, the 2024 report, what are the common family law biases faced by women and girls on the continent?
Thank you. Our report, which we published in May this year, reveals that none of the African countries have attained equality in family laws as envisioned by the Instrument Protecting Women's Rights in Africa, which we call the Maputo Protocol, in which it's Article 6. It calls for full equality in marriage and the family, with no exceptions whatsoever. Our report looked at 20 countries in North, Central, East, South, and West Africa, some cases in points being Algeria, Morocco, Egypt, Kenya, Ethiopia, South Africa, Cameroon, and the DRC, among many others. And we identified full equality in some of the issues we examined, some of them being the registration of marriages, in that most marriages in Africa remain unregistered, and thus it's impossible for women to use legal avenues to seek the rights that fully belong to them.
Okay, so about these inequalities, what did you find or believe to be the basis for this discrimination against women and girls in most family laws?
Thank you. The problem lies in Africa's plural legal systems, where we have civil family law codes existing alongside cultural and customary practices, as well as religious codes that govern family law matters. This then results in stereotypes and discrimination, and also a perception of women like objects, thus they are not fully accorded equal rights as humans. For instance, if we look at the issue of marital rape, women are perceived to be property of their husband, and thus laws do not consider marital rape to be rape.
That is very interesting, and I do agree many countries do see it that way. But it's really interesting inside at the same time. But in your capacity, like an organization like yours, what is your capacity in terms of trying to address this gender discrimination in the laws? And it sounds like you're very well positioned that you can give some lesson learned to other NGOs across the continent.
Thank you. One of the avenues we are passing to do this is coalition building. We have formed the Africa Family Law Network, which is currently in the process of recruiting individuals and other NGOs to advocate for the reforms at the national level based on the findings of our report. We are also passing strategic litigation, which is approaching courts in public interest to determine some of these issues. For instance, in South Africa, there was a case last year where the Constitutional Court ruled that the lack of full protection of Muslim women in accordance with the Constitution of South Africa was contrary to the treaties that South Africa has ratified, and thus required South Africa to amend its laws to fully protect Muslim women on an equal basis with all other women. And that strategic litigation is a very key avenue that we are passing, along with sensitization, capacity building, and media awareness.
Yeah, and I'm curious to know, you did bring up a lot, you know, the Muslim women, and so that brings religion, that brings a lot of things. But what should be the role, for instance, for the president in this matter, since, you know, legislative laws are involved in how everybody's treated in society?
Thank you. The president should really convene the majority in parliament to reform these laws through amendments, through enacting new laws, and also expediting reforms where reforms have stalled. The president also needs to be a champion of this issue by exemplifying a good example in the family setup, but also by ensuring adequate budgetary allocation to eliminate gendered poverty, which then drives these patriarchal norms and excludes most women from equality in the economy, which translates to inequality in the family.
Thank you, Ms. Deborah. We'll have to take a quick break. When we return, we'll be continuing our conversation, but we also want you to tell us what you think about the topic. Share this on our social media platform at VOA Africa. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Use the hashtag VOA Our Voices. We'll be right back.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain, and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in
health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Welcome back. You are with Our Voices, and we are discussing family laws that continue to put women and girls in a life of disadvantage. And with us via Skype from Nairobi is Deborah Nyokabi, Equity Now's Program Officer in the Global Campaign for Equality in Family Law in Africa.
Yes,
we'll continue our conversation, right?
Yes, definitely. Deborah, thank you so much for being with us. But before we jump in to continue our discussion, let's hear some of women in in Zimbabwe and in Tanzania, what they had to say about laws that they have to navigate through in their everyday lives to be able to preserve their rights. In Tanzania, we have Anna Wilkins, Dominica Olwer, and Zaina Mkwazu. In Zimbabwe, we have Jacqueline Sande and Lucy Chivasa, and also Ndana Moyo from Harare. Let's take a look in our Your Voice segment.
In most of the African communities, females are not supposed to inherit anything. So most of the parents, I would say dads, when they get girl children, they are not at peace unless they have got a boy child to inherit whatever they have invested their lives looking for. To my perspective, what should be done is that parents need to accept, first of all, and the other thing is they need to change their perspective by giving both genders this equality. I mean, male and female children to have the same position in the family.
After the husband passed away, because these family members, relatives, some relatives, young brothers and big brothers of that husband in one blood. They forced that woman to be married among of that family. And when that woman said no, they take each and everything which she got with that man who passed away. So that is not right. This woman, she have right to choose what she wants. She's supposed to choose a man who she loves.
I wish the law of marriage, among the provisions which give the right of a girl to get married and under age, to be changed, because when someone reaches an age of majority, she can decide on her own issues and not getting decision from his elders. Yes.
Our culture and the social norms is the biggest basis for discrimination, because some of the laws do actually follow what we culturally believe. For example, in the Domestic Violence Act, when someone beats their partner, which mostly the perpetrators are males, unfortunately, the law says they can seek a protection order. But that is not what is ideal, because if someone just commits a crime, why can't they just be arrested and put in jail? For example, inheritance. I know the law now says a surviving spouse can inherit, but imagine a scenario where my mother is in the rural areas, my father dies, she inherits the rural homesteads, and then at some point she wants to move on with life, gets another partner. Is she really free to bring that new partner?
I think the basis for discrimination for women and girls has been mostly the inconsistencies in the law, or the lack of alignment between the law and the Constitution. It creates room for discrimination because it is not straightforward, it is not prescriptive, it is vague. For us in Zimbabwe has been the basis for most discrimination against women.
Especially Zimbabwean women, most of them, they are not financially emancipated. They rely on the husband for their sustenance, and therefore it means that their voice is compromised. They are unable to assert these rights because they are afraid of losing the breadwinner. If the breadwinner then turns against them, it means that they will be having nothing to survive on. What I would change is maybe to advocate and to increase awareness of the rights that are available for women in terms of inheritance laws, in terms of child custody. The laws may be there that support women. You find that the Children's Act provides that when a couple separates or when parties separate, custody automatically vests with the mother. But sometimes the mother will not be having accommodation. The mother will not be having a job to support her children. And the man takes advantage of that. The man is capable of hiring very expensive lawyers to defend themselves, and in the end, women in their rights, they are unable to access these because of limited capacity.
Very interesting what women in Zimbabwe and Tanzania had to say. Now let's get back to you, Dr. Nyokabi. What is your take on what these women had to say and maybe other issues that seem to be across the board for women and girls in Africa in general?
Yeah, it seems so. The women really speak to the lived experiences, and I like that example highlighted of child custody. There are various countries where, in our report, if a woman remarries, then she loses the custody of the child, but that does not apply to men. And then it means that, men are permanent parents, where women are conditional parents because of the issue of sexism in the law. The other fact that has been spoken about is the issue of access to justice for women in rural and remote areas. The law may exist, but then it becomes very difficult and expensive to navigate the court system to access lawyers and all that. And as such, we need publicly funded legal aid systems across the continent so that even where laws exist, then women can be able to follow up and seek justice in the right avenues.
Well, despite that, I am sure you have success stories on effort that are being done to preserve the right of women and girls. Can you share some of them with us?
Thank you. I think we do have good success stories across the continent. For instance, on each and every issue we researched, where there were gaps in certain countries, there are other countries that have progressive laws and even practices, and there's a lot for countries to learn from each other. In one of the cases, for instance, a widow had been evicted from her home. She had also been admitted to hospital since her husband had beaten her and committed suicide upon realizing that he had grievously harmed her. However, through interventions from our partner organizations, she was able to seek medical help. And then with economic assistance, she was able to rebuild her life. And now she leads Widows Empowerment Organization in the country. So there are those examples. There are also instances where we have had women access equal division of property. For instance, in Kenya, the Matrimonial Property Act calls for equality in the distribution of property and even recognizes non-financial contribution. And there are various cases in which women have been able to secure property rights after divorce.
Wow. It's very inspiring and encouraging to hear such kind of success stories indeed. But Ms. Nyokabi, earlier you were mentioning about the Maputo Protocol. It has been 2 decades since the African Union adopted the Maputo Protocol to safeguard the rights of women and girls. Would you say now it's outdated? And also together without, can you tell us how such kind of regional and international law help protect the everyday life of women on the continent?
I wouldn't say the Maputo Protocol is outdated. It's a critical and important treaty that helps to protect the rights of women in Africa. So far, 21 years later, because we are celebrating the 21st anniversary, 45 out of 55 member states of the African Union have ratified the protocol. It is very critical since, for instance, it protects the rights of girls alongside the rights of women, and it's also the first international treaty that recognizes the right to medical abortion. It's thus a very, very progressive treaty, and what is lacking is implementation at the national level. It's important, for instance, on family law, because on Article 6 and 7, it calls for equality in marriage and the family. And if African countries were to put those provisions in their laws, the way they're just stipulated in that treaty, and ensure implementation, we wouldn't have any more discrimination in family law. So the problem we have is non-implementation.
Very well. We have to advocate for more implementation on these laws because they are there, right? Well, we end our show on that note. Thanks to our guest, Ms. Deborah Nyokabi of Equality Now, who joined us via Skype from Kenya, Nairobi. Be sure to watch our voices on the VOA website at voaafrica.com and on our YouTube channel, where you can catch up on the latest episode and the latest news stories around the world. And of course, thanks to our editorial and production team on our voices. On behalf of VOA, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, good day.